Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about what changed in the last few days. There's been a few patches out. Let's go through it. I'll also put the final update for my Caustic Arrow Trickster Ballista at the end of the video, so if you came here for that, we can swap there. But let's talk about the league and what they tried to do with the last few patches. So GGG responses over the last few days have been universally pretty tone deaf. Number one, Chris Wilson posted his most downvoted post yet to date, and it talks about item drops, and we're going to talk about that soon. But before that, I kind of want to talk about what they tried to at least fix. And let's talk about if it was actually enough. Let's go through it one by one. So since we last talked, there was the 3.19D and the 3.19E patch. And our first thing that we're going to look at is Archnem. Now for Archnemesis in particular, there has also been a new post posted 5 hours ago as of this recording. And basically talk about nerfing Archnemesis even further. And that is simply because the Archnemesis changes that we had in 3.19C and 3.19D just weren't really enough. Now my problem with this post is not that the changes here aren't good. I'll link the post down in the description. Basically, some enemies like Chaos Weavers are not immune to Wither anymore. Those were really annoying for my build. Enemies are not as resistant anymore. Reduced effect, right? Overall, this basically means everything is less tanky. We also had the 3.19D patch here address like rarity stacking and basically making it so Archnemesis monsters being more rewarding, which I think is just once again kind of tone deaf. I don't think this is what the community wants. Overall, after seeing all of these changes, I still don't know what to do with Archnemesis. Like, maybe they have it now figured out, but here's my problem. We were here before. In 3.18, we had exactly the same cycle with Archnem comes out, it is trash. It gets better to a point where, okay, now it's something in the game. But what does it add? Well, maybe not that much. But my biggest problem with this is I actually want Archnem to be removed simply because they just seem to not be able to figure it out, or for some reason always go back to problems. And they can do stuff like that with the league mechanic, for example, right? If they fuck up Lake of Kalandra, the game is still like vanilla, which is still fun. We've had leagues before where the league mechanic is completely useless and you're just like, progression is still fun. Maybe there's a few uniques. There's still something for you there. But when you talk about revamping rares, they just seem to be, they're just not cautious enough. It almost seems like there was some kind of intern there thinking, oh, rares, is that a big part of the game? I don't know. When in reality, that's like half of the game. When you change rares like this, you have to be super careful, and they just weren't. So in my opinion, if they want to do something with Archnem in the future, with rares in the future, take somebody who is more careful. Whoever did this definitely did not do their homework. This whole game revolves around rares. It cannot be that it is so overwhelming that you cannot play the game. A lot of new players are having incredible problems. If you make difficulty in an ARPG, make it opt-in, not just baseline. This is something I always plead for in ARPGs. You can make your game as hard as possible for the sweaty nerds, but don't make it so somebody actually cannot play this game because they're getting jumped on by this absolute garbage. In my opinion, the only solution to this problem for it to not come back at 3.20 and 3.21 is remove Archnemesis altogether. I know they have a lot of sunken cost here, which is a buzzword that has been thrown around. They have put too much time into Archnemesis, so I guess they're now committed to it. I don't know what it is. I don't know who at GGG thinks this is still a good idea. I think this has to be completely revamped from the ground up. Remove Archnemesis altogether. It won't happen. I'm just saying that's, I think, the only solution to this. Now, when it comes to Harvest, I'm a little bit torn because on the one hand, Harvest will never be what it once was, and I think that is by design. Chris Wilson once said in an interview that they regretted doing Harvest in the first place because it gave people a expectation that they didn't want them to have. So I think this is their plan, basically, to consolidate the community. Here's what I think they should have done if they didn't want Harvest in the game. After the leak came out, just remove it, right? But what they did is they put out Harvest and they made it even stronger in Ritual, and then everything just revolved around Harvest, and from there on out, it was just such an integral part of the game, such a beloved part of the game, that now everything that like gets worse just feels really bad. Now, when we look at the Harvest changes here, it's mostly around the cost of crafts instead of dropping more life force, which is basically the same thing, right? Just vice versa. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. If you reduce the price, if you drop more, it's the same outcome. But when we look at some of these changes, you can just see how rushed these prices were. Like, look at this. The change a divination card into another random divination card used to be 1,000. This is a craft I didn't even do because I was like, this is not worth it. I'm not getting anything. And now they reduced it to 75, which is still a joke, but it's like, It's less than 10 times as expensive. What are you doing? How do you come up with these numbers? Like, look at this. Synthesize an item goes to 5,000 from 50,000. It feels like they didn't even think about this. This is my problem. I don't know what happened this patch. They're like, Archnem, are rares a big deal? I don't know. Is crafting a big deal in Path of Exile? I don't know. Let's just shake it up. I mean, they're treating this like rares or crafting in general, or I guess loot drops are not that big of a deal and they could just juggle around a little and just try it a little. They screwed their game up big time with this patch, and I don't think they realize how much just yet. Like, these costs are so sloppy. Look at this. Reforge Influence, 50,000 to 5,000. Some of these other costs have gone down to like 4 Splinter. It's like, I don't know what to say. Like, from 300 to 30. Like, who did this list? Who is responsible for this? Who's responsible for Archnemesis? Is there going to be a thing? Now, one thing I want to say is about Chris Wilson. Everybody's talking about Chris Wilson. Now, honestly, I don't think Chris Wilson could write any of this. This is like a document that is written by 10 people. Chris is basically the person presenting this to us. If you've ever seen an interview of Chris Wilson, he cannot answer the easiest questions. And he's supposed to write these blog posts about like intricate things in the game. No, he isn't. He's basically the fall guy, right? He's the CEO guy. He's protecting his people. Sure, I get that. I just want to know what happened here, and I want to know who's responsible for this and what's going to be done in the future. Because who's to say that this is not going to happen in 3.20? Who? I don't know. Like, it's crazy. So to me, the harvest changes, they're a good attempt, let's put it that way, simply because they want a very toned down version of harvest. And for that, at least now it's like semi-usable. There are a few crafts now that I think I could use. Overall, it's still a complete shell of what it was, and I don't think this is going to change in the future. And that is just probably it. We'll just have to take what we get with Harvest. I don't think we'll ever get back old Harvest. I don't think we'll get back crafts like Reforge prefix keep suffix or Reforge suffix keep prefix. I just want to quickly talk about these and how crazy it is that these are now gone. So meta crafting in general is really, really expensive. And the thing that you don't want to introduce in it is risk. And one of the things that these two crafts did is basically, if you've never metacrafted before, it takes too long to explain. But what they basically did is that if you brick your item, you can unbrick it again. And that was obviously very valuable. Whereas now, if you want to unbrick an item, you'll have to take a 50-50 with an Orb of Annulment, which is just overall really, really huge. And when we talk about the economy, you could say, well, what do I care about, like mirror crafts or whatever? But most of these crafters make a lot of items along the way that get sold for a lot less, basically feeding the economy okay or good items as well. Now, on the positive side here, I will say some stuff. For example, the Reforge a influenced rare with a random modifiers got cut from 50k to 5k. This is actually something where I would say this could be better than it was before, simply because you don't have Reforge influence more likely anymore. But for some crafts, it's actually not necessary. And in that case, I've tried getting this craft on TFT, right? I've been waiting for days, and I know the top crafters will always buy these crafts before me, and I never got one. Now I can just buy 5,000 of these and actually do it. So there's also some of these changes. For example, the fracture change here. Now it's not 1 in 5, it's 1 in 4, which is huge already. It also went down from 50,000 to 10,000. So that could also be a thing that is now interesting. For example, for bows, getting that +2 fracture. It will make rolling physical weapons easier overall. So there's also a little bit of kind of like sun on the horizon, I guess you could say, which means that some of these crafts that you just wouldn't get on TFT, you don't have to go on TFT, and you can actually use as many as you have currency for. You don't have to wait for days for somebody to actually farm them. Now, number 3 is pretty important for me personally. I can forgive some things that are shitty in the league if I at least have the league mechanic that is rewarding, because I can kind of like hyper focus on that at least for a week or two. So yeah, if they fix that, that's at least something, but we're gonna talk about the big one in the room in a second. Now, Lake of Kalandra has been increased. This is the C patch that we already saw. Massively increased the chest rewards from non-league encounters throughout the lake, particularly at high map levels and difficulties. And yes, the chests do now drop more. However, I'm still not sure it's quite there where we want it to be. And I really hope they maybe go over this again, because in the newest patch, all they do is basically talk about all the other rewards. They talk about the stuff like artifacts, currency, all the league mechanic specific rewards. So they're basically doing 2 balance patches here to overall increase the rewards of all tiles. And I don't know if it's there just yet. I will just say that at least it doesn't feel terrible anymore to run them. They now actually drop decent loot. A lot of the free notch, the 4 notch rewards have been bumped up quite a bit. But yeah, if you haven't engaged with the league mechanic yet, I will make a video soon about it, tell you everything about it. So overall, Lake of Kalandra, they're making an effort, but once again, this is the lowest stake on the list. Number 4, let's talk about loot. So to really talk about loot, we have to go back to Chris Wilson's post here about the improvements to item drops. And this is one of the most out of touch posts that I've ever seen in my life. Now, a lot of YouTubers have already raged about this, so I will try to contain myself and actually go over the points. But overall, I was as outraged as you were when you read this. Trust me. They have just removed a lot of quantity. And I'm talking a lot. Everybody who's doing Legions, everybody who's doing Breaches knows exactly what I'm talking about. Abysses, like, it is insane. It's like a different game. They don't drop loot, basically. So much so that my new Atlas strategy completely revolves around only having deterministic loot that has nothing to do with quantity. And their first response post here was severely lacking. They talk about increasing unique drop rates by 33%, increasing the rate of currency drops by 25%. My guys, this is not enough. Like, this does nothing. Having more uniques to hide in my filter, not gonna do anything. This is laughable compared to what they took. So yes, I could rave on and on about this issue here, but at the end of the day, all I will say about loot right now is that please revert it, GGG. It is the same as with Archnemesis. You have turned the knobs too far. You certainly right now don't know what you're doing. There's something wrong with your process. Maybe some people who do not belong where they are currently in your company. I know this is a bold thing to say, but I just can't see another, like, ever since 3.15, there has been such monumental changes that I just don't know what's happening. Maybe it is because of PoE2. Maybe it's the same team as before and they just like woke up and they were like, oh, let's just change everything in the game. So yeah, when it comes to loot, all I can say is revert it. Just revert it. It makes no sense currently. Absolutely no sense. It's super weird. You have like these Archnemesis mods which drop, I don't know, all of a sudden like currency stacks like crazy. You have like flasks dropping left and right, like glass blowers, bubbles. It's like, I don't even know what's happening. Normal mobs do not matter. You might as well not kill them at all. I don't understand the current loot system. It does not feel good. Please revert this. I have nothing else to say. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know why loot was a problem to begin with. I think this was one of the best things in PoE, actually. Just revert it. So what is my conclusion? Number 1, remove Archnemesis. I think you could maybe balance it to a point where it's fine, but I just don't trust this at all. Like, it has been the same dance as in 3.18. Just remove it. If you think about changing rares, put more thought into it, please. This is such an integral part of the game. Every league mechanic has rares. Everything you do has rares in this game. Number 2, revert loot nerfs. Why? If you want group play to be worse, just nerf the quantity bonus if you want to. What was the problem with loot? I don't get it. Like, loot was perfectly fine. Loot was some of the best things about PoE in my opinion. Number 3, what I will say about Harvest, if you want to destroy Harvest, right? I'm not the biggest Harvest stan. You guys know me. But don't do it in a patch where you also remove recombinators. There has to be some way to make endgame items. There has to be some kind of aspirational crafting in the game at any point. So if you remove something monumental as Harvest, you can't also remove something crazy like recoms. I can guarantee you that most people would not be as outraged about Harvest if they kept recombinators in the game, because there would still be something to strive for. Number 4, I think the league mechanic is okay. I'm having decent fun, like arranging the stone tablets, doing the lake. It's not the best. It's not the worst. I think it just needs more rewards. This is like the one thing that they can fix easily. These 3 things are kind of big problems currently. So overall, that's my thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to make another video about this in particular. It's getting kind of exhausting for me, honestly. Maybe they're going to make a patch where that's going to be actually awesome. That's going to address all of my issues. I'm going to sniff some copium over the next few days. But overall, I will just be moving on. I will make currency strats for the people who are still playing. We will kind of dance around these whole loot changes overall. Let's see how it goes. So far, we're making good progress, but yeah, I'll keep you guys up to date. And now let's talk about my build. So my Caustic Arrow Ballista has now basically been finalized, meaning for what I want in my league starter, it does everything I can. I can easily farm T16s. It's like a breeze. So what I got since last time was, number 1, I got Snake Bites with Despair on hit. This basically means that you don't have to get it on rings, which can be really rough. And you also don't have to have it on Frenzy anymore. So what I did for Frenzy and what I have planned is I want to do Frenzy, GMP, faster attacks, just to make it more comfy to use. And then I also want Culling Strike here. Currently, I just have Life Tap because Red Socket, right? I want Calling Strike on here. It's actually annoying to get 4 greens on this, so I didn't do it right now. Other than that, I also bought a Awakened Unbound Ailments that we have been leveling. I didn't really do anything with my other support gems. Like I said, the build is just popping off. Ever since I got the Covenant, it's just so easy that I don't even feel like I need to upgrade anything. Also got a better Quiver over here. This one's pretty huge. Now, if you get a high Chaos damage roll, that could be even better than what I have here. Overall, the build is basically quote-unquote done, but I'll leave you with some stuff you can do if you want to take this a little bit further. So the 3 biggest upgrades that you would have next is number 1, a dual curse setup. The way you do this is you have to get temporal chains on your snake bites. You can't really get temporal chains anywhere else, at least not easily. Now, number 2 is you would have to get a despair ring then. So you would get despair from ring, you could get temporal chains from gloves, and then you have to anoint the +1 curse, which costs you free golden oils. So like I said, this is more for endgame. Temporal chains is absolutely incredible for poison builds because it multiplies your duration as well as making everything slower. So it is just an incredible fit. So that would be number 1. Number 2, Dot multi-rings. And this one's pretty rough to do overall. So if you look at Essence of Delirium, it says here, ring 12 to 15 damage over time multiplier. These are huge. These can multiply your damage by quite a bit. And basically what you would do is you would try to get resistances, obviously on your rings because you're probably going to need it. And on top of that, damage over time multiplier. That is pretty damn rough to get, but we're talking about upgrades, and that is 1. You can also work with fractured mods. So for example, what you can do is you can have like fractured life or a fractured resist. Then that makes spamming Essence of Deliriums a lot easier. Also, if you can stomach the resistances elsewhere, Vermilion rings are huge. It's like 7% increased life, 8% with Catalyst. And number 3, Olnatol's Vow. Now this Emmy is incredibly expensive, as you can see here. It is your basically endgame amulet, and what it does is socketed support gems can also support skills from your body armor. This will increase your mana cost of your main skill, so you might have to think about that a little. You could go maybe for life tap. You can play around it as you want, but basically this gives you a little bit of resistances. It's completely random. It goes from like -30 to 30 and -23 to 23. The important part here is that you socket another support gem, and it's basically like a 7-link. And what you would want is Awakened Vicious Projectiles, which probably gives you another 40% more damage. So yeah, that would be an incredible upgrade over whatever else you could have on your amulet. But overall, when it comes to the build, I was incredibly happy with how this went. It was actually smoother than EA last patch, which I was very, very surprised by. The Covenant has really been carrying. That being said, when we look at the price tag that this big boy has, we can also see that it has been getting more and more expensive. Now, this is obviously on the 6-link. If you go normal, it has been at 7 divines now. I bought mine for 5, then it went up to 9. Now it's on 7. So if you think that you're never going to get this, obviously the build is a lot worse. Overall, Covenant has been a complete treat to kind of elevate a okay build into a really, really good build. And when it comes to Trickster versus Pathfinder, nowadays, I would never recommend anything but Trickster. The life on kill and the mana on kill are just so incredible with Polymath. Just for this node alone, I would never, ever go Pathfinder. No chance. Heartstopper, I think, is one of the most underrated ascendancies in general. For softcore, obviously. On hardcore, you can't really rely on it. Overall, this has made me a lot tankier than I thought I would be. One step ahead is such quality of life, such a nice node, especially while you're leveling as your first ascendancy. And yeah, Swift Killer has been a nice 4th edition overall. I'm really, really happy with the build and where it went. I hope you are as well. This will be my last update of the build. When I see you next, we're going to talk about currency. And yeah, that's it for me. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do stuff like this without you. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, super fun right now. We're currently farming some stuff. We made a little bit of monies down the line. We're farming scarabs. We're farming everything. At the end, we're going to do all the tablets, do all the stack decks. We have a lot of 2-gen gambles in front of us. We're going to see how it goes. There will also be a new build very, very soon. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.